Liverpool, 2015. A routine police stop unfolds on a quiet residential street. Three men are pulled over without drama at first: Edward Murphy, John Mangan, and William Summerall. The officer approaches expecting the usual: licenses, checks, and if nothing's wrong, on their way. Instead, they pull out phones, hit record, and close in. "Rat!" one of them yells. "Fat Muppet!" another spits. Murphy orders the officer back to his car. Summerall ignores instructions, paces with aggression, and talks over him. The aim is obvious: turn a stop into a show, swamp it with noise, and project impunity. For the officer, it signals a shift: men acting as if daylight is protection. These weren't random troublemakers. They were the Anfield County Lines Gang, a group whose reach, money, and bravado made them feel untouchable. For 6 years, their grip stretched from Liverpool into Lanarkshire, Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, Devon, Cornwall. They drove brand-new Range Rovers at £6,000 a month, wore Rolex watches like medals, ordered magnums in clubs, and filmed it all to sell a message: we run this. Edward Murphy had a fixation that said everything about his view of power: fireworks. He stockpiled them and launched them from rooftops in central Liverpool, splashing color across the night as a public announcement of who they thought they were. Beneath the flash, the reality was violent. In Darwin, a 16-year-old runs through the streets, lungs burning, chased by men who've decided he can't be trusted. In a phone call, he says he can't leave a hotel because if he steps outside, they'll stab him. Elsewhere, addicts lose control of their front doors through cuckooing. Dealers move in, turn the place into a base, and keep the resident compliant with heroin or crack. And in February 2016, when officers cornered William Summerall on a rooftop, someone below threw a makeshift firebomb. 4 officers were hit by flames and their uniforms caught fire. This was escalation with heat and risk attached. They glorified confrontation and thought capturing officers on their phones proved something. But Operation Scarava was meticulous, patient, relentless, tracking them step by step. Phones document evidence, not invincibility. A chest-thumping sidewalk moment becomes a still frame in a courtroom. And 11 years in prison is a long replay. The model they used didn't just blend into the national picture, it helped draw it. Edward Murphy, Hamie Jarvis, and Stephen Harrison began operating out of Anfield, Liverpool around 2010 and kept going until 2016. They weren't subtle, loud, obvious, aggressive, but effective because of supply. Francis Fenn could provide product at purities as high as 88%. With purity that high, once cut with mixing powders, they could flood an area, hit streets quickly, and carve out territory faster than smaller groups could respond. The strategy: move fast, saturate demand, push out rivals with force, volume, and fear. From Anfield, they sent lines into Lanarkshire, into Greater Manchester and West Yorkshire, and further into Devon and Cornwall. A local operation thickened into what would be labeled nationally as county lines, outposts stitched together by phones, couriers, and the exploitation of people with no leverage. Violence floated near the surface of almost every interaction. Intimidation was the norm. Rivals were shoved aside, and neighborhoods felt the difference. Strangers who didn't go home, a new rhythm where fear set the tempo. The watches and cars weren't symbols of success, they were tools to project it. For 6 years, that shadow seemed endless. Empires don't function without labor. The top men kept distance and filled the gaps with those least able to refuse: vulnerable people, addicts, teenagers, children. Through cuckooing, you take a vulnerable addict living alone, offer free drugs, and get the door open. Once inside, the house becomes a depot. Cutting agents and scales appear, deals are made, and the person on the lease becomes another moving part, paid just enough to stay dependent. It was never short-term. Ordinary-looking homes hid in operation invisible unless you were inside. Children were swept in because their age made them useful. A teenager draws less suspicion until reality gets complicated. Darwin in Lanarkshire saw one boy roped into the cycle, traveling between Liverpool and nearby towns, acting as a runner. Suspicion became evidence. A whisper spread that he'd been talking to police. Maybe it was true, maybe not. It didn't matter. An older gang member gave chase. The run through Darwin wasn't cinematic, it was raw panic. He burst into a hotel, called for help, and said if he left, they'd stab him. 16 years old, sprinting to keep the only thing he had left: time. That is the reality behind the optics. Fireworks above the skyline, glittering watches and hired cars. Not harmless indulgence, harm disguised as celebration. While a teenager pleads for a safe exit in Darwin, the men who benefit launch fireworks and smile at the echoes. Edward Murphy's taste for cars was a message. A brand new Range Rover read from a distance, and at $6,000 a month to hire, the cost said everything. The vehicle itself was valued at over $100,000. Not long after he passed his test, he was seen in an Audi worth £40,000. Rolex watches sat on insiders' wrists, magnums poured while phones recorded the story they wanted to tell. When officers eventually raided, they found Murphy's other obsession in bulk: fireworks. Hundreds of them. Everything paid for through the trade and not hidden. The spending was part of the brand. Side by side with that lifestyle were people who couldn't leave their own homes once the wrong person stepped in. Addicts trapped through cuckooing. Teenagers and children pushed into risky tasks with no safety net. The gang wanted bravado to be the headline, but the ground truth was fear and exploitation. Each Rolex was a dare, each Range Rover an insult, each firework a declaration they believed nothing could touch them. The arrogance didn't stay in clubs or driveways. Back to 2015 and the stop that set the tone. Edward Murphy, John Mangan, and William Summerall turn a mundane interaction into a staged confrontation. They pull out phones, surround the officer, shout "rat" and "fat muppet," and try to reclaim the authority of the stop. Murphy tells the officer to get back in his car. Summerall refuses to stand quietly and keeps the sound levels high. The plan was to weaponize the camera to provoke the officer and capture a version of events that fit their narrative. They misread the moment. Then February 2016 arrives, and confrontations take another turn. At an old club building on Townsend Lane, William Summerall is stashing drugs and weapons. When officers move in, he scrambles to the roof. Someone on the street below throws a makeshift firebomb. 4 officers end up in the blast, uniforms catching fire. That is attempted murder by any reasonable measure. Each rooftop turned into a stage, each street into a battlefield, shifted them from nuisance to threat. While they kept pointing phones at officers, believing they were gathering proof of their own impunity, those same phones were sealing their fates. And Operation Scarava was building a case with patience and detail. Every word on the street mattered. Every encounter, captured by body-worn cameras, mattered. Insults and threats would be replayed not under club lights, but under courtroom lamps. From 2016 to 2017, Operation Scarava took form as a coordinated dismantling, not with fanfare, but with consistency. Surveillance tailed vehicles through the night, logged addresses where runners and couriers paused, watched patterns repeat along motorways, and noted cars lingering at flats across Muryside and Lanarkshire at hours that didn't fit ordinary life. Stash houses were identified by who arrived with packages and who left with different ones. The digital evidence set the circuitry. Phones and SIM cards tell stories, location histories, call logs, cell site analysis linking people across distance. Financial records were the other half. Cash deposits and withdrawals revealed patterns. Expenditures lined up with known events, the £6,000 Range Rover payments, the watches, the nights out. Every extravagance doubled as proof. With the picture clear end to end, detectives worked with the Crown Prosecution Service to put warrants in place. Coordinated raids hit properties across Muryside and surrounding towns. They found cash in drawers and suitcases, cutting agents in bulk, scales dusted with residue, notebooks with names, debts, addresses, amounts, a mix of weapons, knives, and blunt objects, imitation firearms, phones and SIM cards seized and imaged. At Murphy's place, the fireworks he loved logged as illicit assets. After roughly a year, the infrastructure fell away. Their attempt to paint themselves as victims of harassment collapsed. The cars and watches were exhibits. The fireworks were proceeds of crime. Momentum turned. By September 2017, in Liverpool Crown Court, 19 men stood ready to learn that bravado doesn't beat dates and data. The top-tier sentences were 11 years and 4 months each. Edward Murphy, Hamish Jarvis, Stephen Harrison, and Francis Fenn, the supplier whose 88% purity cocaine powered the operation. No more Range Rovers, new Rolexes, champagne magnums, or rooftop fireworks. John Mangan received 8 years, 8 months. He was captured by body cameras shouting "rat" and "fat muppet." William Summerall was given 7 years, 8 months. He had retreated to a roof at Townsend Lane while someone below threw a firebomb at officers. Others in the network were handed 6 years or more. Jaime Gray, Mark Farr, Walter Corrin, Liam Dickinson, James Tyrrell, Stephen Gandy, Louis Aspinwall, Francis Usher, Ataf Ali, Eddie Hamilton and Ricky Doran got 5 years each. Abby Jill received 4 years and 9 months. Callum Arat got 4 years. 2 teenagers, both 16 at arrest, stood apart. One received a 12-month referral order, the other a youth rehabilitation order with curfew. The combined sentences topped 135 years. Murphy lost the vehicles, watches, clothes, and rooftop shows he flaunted, exchanging them for 11 years and 4 months. Mangan's phone, once held up like a shield, became part of a trial bundle. He received 8 years and 8 months. Summerall's rooftops became a memory, replaced by 7 years and 8 months. But sentences cannot undo the cuts. The teenager sprinting through Darwin, the addict who lost the safety of their front door, the 4 officers set on fire. They filmed officers believing that made them powerful. Officers filmed them, and it made them guilty. Yet the Anfield gang is only one chapter inside Liverpool's link to the drug trade. While this network ran on intimidation and county lines, 2 other men from Liverpool moved in a different circle, international, sophisticated, with ties towards South American cartels. Rotterdam, October 15, 2013. A modest bar named Café Dietl controlled entry with a buzzer. Inside, European buyers and international suppliers negotiated routes, financing, shipments, risk measured in hundreds of kilograms. When Dutch police raided, they recovered handguns, radio scanners, a cash counting machine, tools of serious crime. Among those at the tables were 2 men from Liverpool, Michael Morgan from Crocs and Robert Gerrard in his early 50s. Their links tied them to conspiracies worth at least £60 million, with cocaine packed into shipments of meat imports from Argentina, passing through Rotterdam and extracted after inspections. When the raid came, some were arrested. Morgan and Gerrard slipped the net and fled within days. Robert Gerrard didn't last forever on the run. By October 2016, he arranged through his solicitor to surrender at Manchester's Central Park police station. He said the obvious, that living that way was unbearable. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to import cocaine. In 2017, the sentence arrived, 14 years in prison. Michael Morgan disappeared deeper, with fake passports and multiple aliases, moving through Europe under different names. Intelligence suggested periods in the Netherlands, then Dubai, with movements between the Middle East and Europe. 8 years passed while he remained one of Liverpool's most wanted. The National Crime Agency and Dutch police kept going. In April 2021, the break came. He was arrested in Dubai, extradited to the UK, stood in Manchester Crown Court in 2023, pleaded guilty, and received 12 years. While the Anfield gang drank champagne in Liverpool, Michael Morgan and Robert Gerrard negotiated weight near the nerve centers of European trafficking. While Murphy pressed a button to ignite fireworks above a city that knew his name, others hid cocaine inside consignments of meat from Argentina. Different scale, same city, same streak of self-belief, and the same end, a cell door. Consider what it takes to stare down an officer on a residential street and decide a phone camera can rewrite power. Consider what it takes to throw a makeshift firebomb at 4 officers and imagine there won't be a long echo. Consider what lives in a person who launches fireworks from Liverpool rooftops while a 16-year-old runs through Darwin, terrified. Is this arrogance? Denial? The belief that if you project strength loudly enough, consequences hesitate? Or just the spell of success narrating itself until evidence speaks louder? Go back to 2015, a routine stop. 3 men pull out phones, circle a single officer, and sling "rat, fat muppet." Murphy throws his voice at the uniform. "Get back in your car." They think it's a show of force that will make them look like winners on someone's screen later. In reality, the cameras around them record a different story. 2 years later, in Liverpool Crown Court, Murphy hears 11 years, 4 months. The phones kept recording, just not in the way he intended. Power isn't what you say into a device or flash on your wrist. What a car communicates when it turns into your street, or what a bottle signals on ice in a club. Real power is quieter and heavier. Facts accumulated, surveillance patiently done, a file built to withstand cross-examination. The bravado burned hot, but briefly. The evidence sat still and waited. The arc isn't neat. It leaves a tangle of lives. The teenager in Darwin won't forget being hunted. People whose homes were cuckooed carry the echo of feet that should never have crossed their floors. The officers who burned remember the smell of uniforms on fire. Courts can state clearly what lines cannot be crossed. They cannot erase the harm. In this world, the Rolex and Range Rover, the rooftop fireworks and filmed bravado were instruments to communicate status and mute dissent. When the cycle reversed, those same instruments turned into proof. The cars became entries in financial exhibits. The watches turned into questions on a forensic accountant's spreadsheet. The fireworks moved from rooftop to police warehouse. The phones, once waved in officers' faces, were bagged and tagged. It's easy to think the inevitability of capture is a lesson everyone hears in advance. The truth is, people at the center often cannot hear it until it's read from a clerk's lips. And by then, the only choices left are whether you learn sooner or later. In both the county lines story and the international trafficking story, the conclusion followed the same outline. Performances didn't carry the day when the curtain came down. Recordings didn't play the part they hoped for. The totals weren't in their favor. This story is built from the same sequence. A routine stop becomes theater. The gang model takes shape. Cuckooing and youth exploitation expose the human cost. Confrontations escalate to firebombs. Operation Skarava and Operation Skarava collect proof. Raids recover cash. Cutting agents, scales, notebooks, weapons, phones, SIM cards, and fireworks. Liverpool Crown Court compiles it into consequences. 19 men hear numbers they cannot talk down. And elsewhere in Europe, men from the same city sit in a cafe that looks ordinary but isn't. And choices made bend their lives into shapes they didn't plan to wear. Edward Murphy believed the cost of a car defined his risk. John Mangan believed a shouted insult could bend order. William Summerall believed a rooftop changed what he faced. Jaime Jarvis and Stephen Harrison believed the model would keep them fed. Francis Fenn's purity numbers made everything look easier for a time. Jaime Gray, Mark Farr, Walter Corrin, Liam Dickinson, James Tyrrell, Stephen Gandy, Louis Aspinwall, Francis Usher, Ataf Ali, Eddie Hamilton, Ricky Doran, Abby Jill, Callum Arrett. Names stacked on a courtroom checklist because choices compound. The two teenagers stand out because they show where the model looked for labor and how fear kept margins working. Michael Morgan from Croxy sat at a table in Rotterdam, and later in the same city or in Dubai, Michael Muggan kept moving to stay ahead. Robert Gerard endured 3 years as a fugitive before admitting what hiding does to a person. The routes through Rotterdam weren't guesses. The meat shipments weren't a trick. They assumed the same thing the fireworks, cars, and insults did, that fortune favors those who look like they belong at the top of the staircase. But the staircase belonged to someone else all along. Phones record everything isn't a slogan, it's technical fact. These networks built themselves on technology and bravado. In the end, both made prosecutions easier. You cannot outrun the logic. You can only learn it the hard way, or the harder way. If you want more true stories where criminal arrogance collides with consequences, like this source and subscribe. New cases arrive regularly, each one showing why a loud performance is no match for a well-built case.